Hello and welcome to Amateur Radio Topics. I'm Kevin, VK6 Lima Whiskey, and I think the last podcast was back in March, just prior to the Baru Commonwealth contest. So there's a little bit of news to catch up on. Firstly, the LF bands. I decided to put up a new 160mm antenna. For some years I've used a inverted L, half-wave inverted L on 160 meters, and with an off-center feed. Also worked quite well on 80 meters. So it's a good dual band antenna. But I was keen to go back to an inverted V for 160 with the top at around about 30 meters height. And I've also added to this tower, I've added a 80 meter dipole, probably around about 3 to 4 meters underneath that at the apex. So the 160 meter performance with the inverted V, it seems very similar to what I had with the inverted L, to be honest, but the antenna is much quieter on receive. So although I've got beverage antennas, I've got separate receive antennas on 160. There are times where the propagation, for whatever reason, on 160 meters in VK6 seems to come in on a high angle. Some of the DX on the grey line seems to favour a higher angle. And so the transmitter antenna, the inverted V transmitter antenna, actually seems to work a little bit better on receive under those circumstances. The beverages work well if the angle of arrival is quite low, and then you can see quite a difference between the beverage and the transmitter antenna. So it's been quite interesting. Actually, considering the conditions on 160 and the fact that we're not really quite in the season yet, throughout August and also July, I've watched quite a bit of DX on 160. It's been fairly good, mainly to the US, mainly to the west coast of the US, and the odd JA, QSO. But the conditions have been sort of okay, but there's nights where there's just nothing at all. It's just completely flat. And on quite a few mornings, I've got up early at daybreak to see if there's been a European opening, but so far, really not successful. I think as we get into September, October, it will change. As you head towards the equinox on 160 from VK6, the band conditions do improve. So I'm kind of really looking forward to that. I quite enjoy 160, and it's unpredictable. You never really know what's going to happen. Obviously, conditions are somewhat different to what they were a few years ago when the sunspot cycle was at a minimum. 80 and 160 seem to be slightly better, but there's still some good openings on the low bands, and you've just got to be there and be ready for an opening. And 160 is probably a little bit more unpredictable than 80 meters. 80 meters, you seem to be able to gauge it a little bit better in terms of whether or not the band will be open. But 160, it's it's full of surprises. So we'll continue on with that. It'd be interesting to go through the season and just see how it compares. I had quite a bit of success last season, which essentially, when I say the season, it's probably our spring, northern hemisphere autumn, through to the northern hemisphere spring. So, which encompasses our summer months here, which is not ideal for us in a way because we get quite a bit of QRN from tropical storms. But in terms of contacting the northern hemisphere, that's the best time for us to try and make those QSOs. So last year was quite successful, and the half-wave inverted L, I'd used that for many years, maybe 10 years. It's quite a good contest antenna, and the fact that it worked well on 80 was a bonus. So it's going to be interesting to see how the inverted V stacks up over a period of time. It's actually quite hard, unless I'm not in a position where I can put both antennas up and test them independently. So really it's more a question of just monitoring the antenna and using it through the season and just getting a feel for whether or not it actually is better. There are some local stations here that use the same setup. They use a high inverted V on 160, and it's useful to compare with them exactly, how they're finding the conditions as well. They're within a few kilometres of me. The other thing I'm planning to do with the 80 metre antenna is that now I've got a dedicated inverted V dipole on that LF tower. On the second tower, which is some distance away. It's probably around about 15 metres from the LF antenna. On the second tower where I've got my HF spider beam, on that tower I plan to put another 80 metre element, and I will be able to use that as a 2-element driven array on 80 metres bidirectional, or I can switch it in either direction, which is useful. I've had this before on 80 metres. It does seem to work quite well. The antenna's probably not quite high enough to get a really low angle signal, but having the second element does give a little bit of gain and also a little bit of ejection off the bat, which is not so much of a problem in VK6. It's not like we're in Europe or the States where you're really very aware of the other signals that are around you and you're trying to get good front to back on any sort of beam antenna. Helps you on receive enormously. The bands, relatively speaking, here are fairly quiet. So, but the gain is useful, and it will probably help to lower the elevation angle as well on transmit, which is always which is good as well. So that was going to be an interesting exercise. I haven't quite got that finished yet. I've got some more work to do on the HF tower because I'm planning on changing the winch mechanism before, hopefully before CQ Worldwide. I'm not doing very well with this at the moment because of quite a few other projects on the go, but I'd really like to change the winch mechanism, which mainly is concerned with the area that, it's mainly concerned with the winch that cranks up the first section and all the other sections follow. It's probably the best way to explain it, and that's the winch that's under that's the section that's under the most pressure. The cable structure on the tower is arranged in such a fashion that when you winch up the bottom section, the other sections automatically follow, and so each of the succeeding sections as you go up the tower, the cables for each section are not under too much stress. But the first section, it's always been a little bit difficult to crank this tower up. It's quite a big tower, quite heavy duty sections, and so I'm just planning on changing that with a couple more pulleys, gives it a little bit more mechanical advantage, and try and make it a little bit easier to winch up. Got a pretty big winch on there. The size of the winch is not really the problem. It's more just the amount of steel that needs to be elevated. So, and I'm still hand cranking these antennas, so I haven't quite graduated yet to an electric winch, but maybe that time will come. It's fairly good exercise, but and the thing is, it's the towers are not being cranked up and down all the time. I tend to crank the towers up, guide them, and leave them up at the full height, because it's just easier than taking them up and down. At the moment, the HF antenna or the HF tower is around about 3/4 height, because there's no contest coming up at the moment that I really need to have this operational for, and I'm mindful of the fact I need to get this antenna down, do some welding. There's a bit of welding involved, some pulleys, replace the cabling on this bottom section, and give the winch a bit of a service as well. So a few things on that tower. Once I get all that squared away, I can look at the 80 metre element on there as well. Getting back to the low band antenna, I've got the 160 metre antenna at the top. I've got the 80 metre antenna, and underneath that, at around about 23 metres, something like that, I've got the apex of the 40 metre X beam, which worked pretty well last year, and actually over the last couple of years. You get some front to back on this antenna. It's just 4 wires with a switch box at the middle, and there is some front to back. There definitely appears to be some gain if I compare it with just a standard 40 metre dipole. And yeah, I think it's probably what I'm going to stick with for 40 at the moment. It's not as good as, say, a full-size 3-element beam, but it's a pretty good antenna in the sense that because it's a wire antenna, it's switched electrically, so it's very easy and quick to change directions. There's no rotators involved or anything like that, and it means that I have a lightweight antenna for 40, which can be electrically switched, and certainly in contests that's a really good thing. The receive antennas are still pretty well the same as they have been. I've got some off-center fed dipoles further down the block of land, around about 100 metres away from the transmit antennas. And I've got, I did change one of those actually earlier on in the year to one of the off-centre fed antennas. I changed that to an extended double ZEP antenna, which is also a very good receive antenna. It's got a slightly narrower beam width, but it works quite well. And I've got these two antennas at right angles to each other, so I can switch between the receive antennas from the shack, and I can always also share the receive antennas between the two different transceivers, which is quite useful. I built some new bandpass filters. I may have mentioned that in a previous podcast, and they've been pretty effective. The bandpass filters essentially only work on the receive side, and if I'm in a contest and I'm taking part and I'm using SO2R or two-band synchronized interleave QSOs, then I need receive filters on those antennas to stop the interstation interference. And I've also got some quarter wave stubs. I've got a quarter wave stub on the 20 metre beam and a quarter wave stub on the 40 metre beam, and that does help a little bit to remove some of the harmonic component on transmit. So the station is pretty well set up, and I think I may have also mentioned that I'm in a new shack now. So I'm not sure if that was in the previous podcast. It may have been. So I'm in a new shack, which is really great. I've got it all set up, and I'm out of the house, which is great also, because for quite a while there I was in the laundry, probably more than a couple of years, while I was involved in building a new shed, a new shack, landscaping, new towers, welding, lots of things going on, but I was still stuck in the laundry. And we've got a pretty big laundry, so it wasn't really a huge problem, and it's got air conditioning and it's quite comfortable, but you can't really beat getting out of the house. So I'm out of the house now, got much shorter runs to the antennas as well, much closer to the towers, which is good. Tidied quite a few things up a bit, which was great. I had sort of cables going everywhere back into the house through the laundry. It wasn't ideal at all. So and getting back into a dedicated shack out of the house, it's well insulated, it's quite soundproof, and I've got the comfort of air conditioning, etc., which is pretty important here, especially in summer. So that's probably a bit of an update. Between the last podcast and this podcast, we've had a trip to Europe, which was a tremendous trip, and I had the opportunity whilst I was there, amateur radio wise, to catch up with a friend of mine in EA6. So I caught up with EA6EJ, and I did operate briefly from his QDH one morning for about 30 minutes, and worked a few stations there as EA6/VK6LW. So that was a lot of fun. Don't really often get to go on holiday and operate from Europe that often. And he's a great guy, had a lot of fun, and caught up with him also for dinner. So really nice radio experience overseas. And then we got back here, and of course we're out of the European summer and back to the Perth winter, which is still not that bad, I have to say. The winter months here are actually quite good, and you can get a lot done. It can be a bit wet, but you can get a lot done because you can work during the day. Whereas in Perth, unfortunately, in summer, you've probably got 2 to 3 months where it's very difficult to do much meaningful work outside during the middle of the day. You've got to try and organise your day around early mornings and late evenings, that sort of thing. So just more recently, I've been also experimenting a little bit with some more QRP. I kind of like QRP in a way. It makes the QSOs a little bit harder to achieve. There's not as many QSOs. It's probably diametrically opposite to what I'm interested in with contests and things like this. But QRP operation is quite fun, and also trying to test out the receive antennas, make sure they're still working okay. I quite often use QRP, and I use the receive antennas on transmit. And I've been doing that recently just with one of my off-center fed dipoles, which is quite a good antenna. It's up at around about, probably average height is around about 40 feet. And working into JA, the States, Europe, long path this afternoon, into worked a G, worked an EA6. So yeah, it's quite interesting. 5 watts, simple dipole style antenna, up in the clear, and it's possible to work the world with 5 watts. So you're not necessarily going to generate a pilot, and some of the QSOs are going to be hard to come by. And of course, the RBN is quite useful. You can actually see whether or not you're really getting out just by calling CQ and seeing what comes up on the RBN. And that's also quite interesting from the point of view of testing out the antennas. So yeah, QRP, it's a bit of fun, and just trying out that mode and that style of operating. It's just a bit different to the other, the other things I'm interested in amateur radio. I suppose a little bit like 160 meters in a way. The QSOs are hard to come by, but you've got to work for them. You've got to earn them. We'll press on here, and we're going to get these towers sorted. CQ Worldwide for me is the next major contest, end of November. CQ Worldwide CW. So I'm going to gear everything up for that. So I tend to go on during most weekends and work whatever contest happens to be on the weekend, just for a bit of practice. That seems to be quite a nice thing to do on the weekend, just very casually. Never serious really in any of these other contests. It's just a question of getting on there and just working a few of the guys and handing out some points, that sort of thing. And also the CW Ops Club has a contest that runs every Wednesday. That runs it's 3 1-hour sessions. It spans Wednesday and Thursday actually of each week. And that's quite a good contest just to play around in, just for an hour. You don't actually need to be a member of the CW Ops to take part in it. You can just give your name and a location, and that's good enough for the exchange. And a lot of regulars get on in that contest. A lot of people use it again for practice. So it's quite a good thing to look out for, CW Ops contests. And that's a pretty decent club actually. There's quite a lot of activities that they sponsor, and they are really keen to promote CW on the HF bands. So that's probably just a bit of a wrap up and getting things up to date from me. I'm also on Instagram now, so you can actually go onto Instagram and search for VK6LW. You'll find me on there with some posts. There's some antenna stuff, there's some operating, it's quite a good way to get the message out there about CW. There's probably more. I was surprised actually there's more on Instagram about HF operating and Summit on the air and Parks on the air, that sort of thing, particularly from the US. So it's been quite interesting just posting some stuff on there and seeing how that's received. And quite a bit of CW interest as well, which is good. If you've got any questions, you can always email me, vk6lw.kev@gmail.com, and be pleased to correspond with you and answer any questions you may have. So on that note, I will say 73s and hope to see you on the bands. And take care. I'm Kevin, VK6 Lima Whiskey.